Awesome. Yeah, welcome back to Hornthrowers. We are joined by Achaierai from Bronze Bull of Vapors. Thank you.
Bull of Vapors, Bull of Bronze. Here's a mouthful.
Well,
yeah. We did it expressly to throw people off, so you fell into my trap.
Happy to. Yeah, so yeah, I'm really happy to have you on the show. I'm familiar with kind of like some of your earlier stuff. I briefly listened to when you showed me the album that we got the preview of and liked what I heard, but I know that you're
I have listened to the album in full a few times. So I'm going to start off with, obviously it's the new album's called the Fractal Ouroboros, which is also hard to say. And it's a follow-up to 2019's offerings of The Flesh and Gold. Did you approach this album any differently, or what was your process of going into that?
Not expressly differently. Over the course of writing it, we realized that it was going to be quite a bit. You know, the record is 73 minutes, which is a lot of music, and it's asking a lot of the listener to sit down and absorb over an hour's worth of music at any given time. But as far as writing goes, I kind of start off with themes that I want to touch on, and the theme for the Fractal Ouroboros was cycles and breaking out of cycles, and then everything just kind of formed out of that. A lot of the writing was done while we were finishing up Offerings of Flesh and Gold, so the initial lyric writing and beginnings of music started way back in 2019, and it just took us a little while to get the finishing touches together.
I mean, that's a cool metaphor in of itself, like kind of the obviously serpent eating its own tail, but then it's the sort of like fractal kind of like the because obviously you see fractals in nature that are kind of like spirals and things like that. Is that, I don't know if you want to elaborate maybe kind of more on the imagery there?
Yeah, so the idea was that the Ouroboros is cycles that we're stuck in, that society is stuck in, that individuals are stuck in, and then the fractal is how people around those people that are stuck in cycles react to it, and how children that look up to their parents who are stuck in cycles, they will start to uh, embody those cycles themselves. So the cycle of violence that society is stuck in, people that are a part of that feel like they get stuck in that cycle as well, and like there's no way of breaking out of it. And the idea was that you can. It just takes effort and time and some pain usually.
Okay, so like it's kind of like dealing with like concepts like generational trauma and that kind of. Okay, that's really interesting.
Less in like a personal, like a person to person basis, but more like the generational trauma of a society that has been embedded in things like capitalism, especially as an American, where our society is and our country is built on colonialism and exploitation. And how do we break ourselves away from that when it's at the very kind of basis of where I come from?
Yeah. So could you describe the album as like a brief on occult liberation in 7 parts? So how does that apply to the theme of breaking the cycles, and sort of what are those 7 parts? Are they the 7 songs? It is 7 songs, isn't it?
Yeah, so that descriptor is specifically towards the 7 tracks on the record, and how they're kind of I saw them as kind of steps of acknowledging situations. The first couple tracks are about reflecting on the capitalist structures that we're a part of, the middle portion of the record is about kind of reflecting on the individual's place in that and how to kind of reconcile it. And then the latter portion of the record is kind of the self-actualization of figuring out how to exist outside of that structure. And then the occult side is mostly about recognizing the power of language and words to change outlooks and change uh, reality to a degree, as much as one can believe in that sort of metaphysical aspect of things.
I mean, you've definitely come to the right podcast because we used to when we first met and we were sort of first hanging out, we were very much like obsessed with like figures like
Grant Morrison.
yeah, Grant Morrison
and Alan Moore.
and kind of like sort of the kind of occultists sort of in comics and things like that, and then that led us down to discovering like Crowley, Hermeticism, Chaos Magic, all this like stuff that I kind of see more as like it's almost like just like wacky self-help in a way, because it is about like kind of changing your like kind of outlook, and because you know your perspective determines reality. If you can change your own perspective, you've changed the world.
Yeah, Alan Moore especially was pretty formative for my baby steps into that sort of thinking as well, and Morrison to a lesser degree, but yeah, both of them were pretty formative for me as well.
So would you say you're on the side of Alan Moore than Grant Morrison in the little war that they have?
If were I recruited to the Grand Psychic War, I would probably be on Alan Moore's side.
There's that
I think
video,
that's
isn't
gonna
there,
have
of
to be the quote for the thumbnail.
there is that video, isn't there, of and they animated it of like someone as
of them having
oh no,
like,
it's
a
not
street
animated,
fight.
it's like people playing them, and yeah, and they're having a magical street
I
fight.
might edit like a few seconds of that in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely come down on them more. As I've gotten older, like definitely think that kind of like Alan Moore, I used to kind of view him as a very grumpy old man, and then I kind of realized he actually has a lot of things to be grumpy about, and he has a
Yeah.
much more kind of academic view when it comes to occultism, whereas Grant Morrison's just kind of like, you know,
It's just like I had a dream about in Kathmandu and all this stuff, and
yeah,
it's a bit wacky,
I
but
went to Kathmandu to be abducted by aliens.
my favorite like occultist is Austin Osman Spare and his like drawings where he just like it was like meditative drawing, wasn't it? Where he just like draw these figures and stuff.
Yeah.
He's really
And
cool.
it's cool how like the stuff that the subconscious can bring about. Early on in my writing career, I did a lot of the kind of dolly of being close to falling asleep. He would sit awake, like drifting off, and I think he would like hold a spoon next to his knee, and when he felt the spoon hit his knee, he would wake up and then paint
Oh,
uh,
wow.
whatever he could see in his mind's eye. I tried to do that with my writing a lot early on when I was in college and stuff. And
Was it successful?
yeah, the stream of consciousness stuff can be pretty powerful. You got to wrangle it a little bit. Everything usually needs an editor too, but the skeleton that you can get from stuff like that is usually pretty interesting.
It's a pretty interesting concept though, because like I've noticed that when I don't sleep properly for a few days, or if I've been at work really early, when I get home and go to sleep, your dreams are just insane. Like they're way more vivid. So
yeah, like I've kind of like experimented like again when I was kind of in that phase really into occultism, like with like lucid dreaming and kind of trying to get into like meditative altered states of consciousness and things like that, and it's very hard. It gets easier the more you do it. It is like working out a muscle almost, and then it can and then if you ever try to get back into it, it's just kind of atrophied, and yeah.
So how do you bring in the themes of occultism with the music then? How does that go about? Like what themes do you explore?
So a lot of it is kind of maintaining the ritualistic aspect of the music and the words, a lot of repetition. The guitarist Ashian and I have been working as drone musicians together for a long time, going on about 10 years now. And that kind of meditative droning aspect comes across in the music. And then there's a lot of points on the record where there's, I'll be chanting something or uh, focusing on a particular phrase near the end, especially. It kind of, with the writing, it kind of dissolves and breaks out into those different chants over the course of the record. And that's kind of how, you chant something because you want to kind of bring it into fruition to some degree. And that's kind of at the core of it, I think.
It's kind of interesting that you've got that approach and that you're kind of seeing it like the kind of occultism magic in very much the linguistic terms that I think like a lot of kind of more like classic kind of occultists do. And it's very interesting that you're kind of bringing that to the fore in like an extreme metal project.
Yeah, thanks. It helps me focus on, you know, when there's so many like, layers of metaphors and big concepts and stuff happening. It helps to focus on what's important in both in the music and whatever message we're trying to get across.
I feel like the visual imagery is really good as well. Like I know in A History of Cages and Broken Bones, where it's talking about the broken bones and stuff like that, it takes you into it, because I know with a lot of extreme metal, when it gets quite meditative, you can get just lost in it. Whereas like stuff like that brings you in, it draws you in. Like the best example I can think of is the Oranzi Pazuzu album from like 2019. I
Mhm.
remember listening to that and I was like, oh, this is really good, getting into it. And then the vocals start and I was just like, oh my God, I feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that balance of like, we want people to enjoy listening to the music, but at the same time the juxtaposition of like the meditative quiet parts and then what I call my old man voice, that the spoken word aspects, trying to lure people in almost, and then with the spoken word emphasizing particular things, like you said, the more concrete images that get focused on through that song and through Annihilation, which is like mostly just kind of snippets of imagery without much like fluff to it. It helps that balance, and it's kind of the equivalent of the like post rock structuring of loud, quiet, loud, but for vocal delivery and for lyrics.
I feel like it's the same with the musicality of it as well. With like, I think is it the first song Trophy where that there's like a really good riff that comes in near the end once you're all into it. And it's
Hmm.
I like that juxtaposition, especially with like the more like meditative extreme metal, where I can just kick in and change gear. And like I've noticed how like crisp the drums are as well on this record. So
Yath, our drummer, is our engineer and mixer as well, so he's got quite the ear for it, and spent a lot of time tuning and tinkering and getting a balance of like, the raw black metal demos vibe while also being having a sense of clarity, not necessarily like crystal clear production, but everything being individually noticeable and having its space within the mix. He's very good at what he does. We're very grateful that he came on for this record from the get go. It added quite a bit to the sound.
yeah, you can tell that like the sound engineer was a drummer just from how the drums sound. They're so like crisp. Um, with the artwork as well, is that like the same artist as the first
It
record?
is, yeah. It's
Yeah,
Alex CF from Fall of Ephrafa and Moro and five or six other bands. Yeah, he did the cover for the first record. We knew he turned around the Offerings album art in like 4 days, which
really.
yeah, it blew us away. We gave him the general concept of the band. We were basically just like, do whatever calls to you. And he turned out that the picture of the bowl within less than a week, and he just got it immediately. And then as soon as we had that experience with him, we knew we wanted to bring him on to work with us for the second one. And there's a lot more art with this one, because we knew the record was going to be longer, and we hoped someone would pick it up to do the double LP. And so we did the extended art for the opening of the gatefold. And it was a difference because there's a lot of people featured in the artwork in this one,
Yeah.
um, which is a lot different from the first record and its art. So that juxtaposition, and then we wanted to have a bit of a different color palette, but still like thematically linked. And so the pinks and purples have been kind of toned down, and we tried to bring out some like blues and browns to kind of counteract that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of nice as well because it's like it's not like quite a watercolor. It's like is it pencil they used?
I think so. Yeah, it's got that texture to it.
Yeah, it's
Um,
really nice. I like the fact that they were going around the bull this time, but the bull's like the skull. It's quite cool.
yeah, we we just wanted it to be like, showing catalyst for individuals and people making their own way, just to kind of be the focal point of it.
Yeah, I think it does tie all together. Like I'm a stickler, like as you know, for like when an album and like when the music and the artwork are all like very synergistic and like I think it does work well. So you said about it being the double fold. How did you come about working with Vita de Testables and Via Productions? Like, because it's released through those, isn't it?
Yeah, Fiat and uh, Vita work very closely together. Um, Pretty much one and the other, as far as I can tell, at least in my talking with them. If a project is released on one, it's pretty much going to be released on the other through uh, Irene and Spain and Barry Ann and the US. Um, our guitarist had worked with Fiat previously. I can't remember what project, but we were aware of each other and knew um, that we wanted to work together to make the vinyl happen. Um, we had been working with Tridroid previously, and Christine had wanted to move away from doing LPs. It was a much more stressful endeavor, and we just felt that the record would be best presented on vinyl, and Barry Ann agreed with us on that, and has been very supportive. Like with Alex, she got it very quickly, got what we were trying to get across and what we stand for, and has shown through her previous releases and other charity things that she's got she's in the right space and able to actually enact change or do her best to the benefits that she does for different animal sanctuaries and things. Really
Yeah,
spoke to all of us.
there's the shirt at the moment, isn't it, with the for the
Uh-huh.
sanctuary in Ireland? Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
that's one thing that's like always impressed me when like both bands and labels manage to not just kind of use their music as like a vehicle to push that kind of like that political message and ideology, but also using it as a vehicle to enact some kind of change in the world. Like Dawn Ray did the sort of refugee rescue, like limited release with the red and black split, and
Hmm.
it's just always an incredibly sort of like cool thing when music can actually enact physical change.
Yeah, and I mean, like it's at the grassroots level, like no one's making hundreds of thousands of dollars or anything doing the type of music and being in the scenes that we're a part of. but it's still cool that, people that, don't have a lot are still willing to give to support these causes and things. It always, warms the heart to see.
I think it's a nice little community as well that like Theo and Vita just have this is I can never say it. I just say Vita have like created as well, like with all the artists that are on the label, it's all very cohesive and it's all very, I don't know, most things that they release I really like as well. So I think
Yeah,
it's
no, Barry Ann's got this really interesting knack to like curate a very particular type of music to her label, but it's still so diverse. It touches on, it's a testament to the genres that we work in too, that, you know, everything can be in this black metal and dungeon synth sort of umbrella, but still be so varied in its sound and what it's trying to achieve.
yeah.
So just because we've like vaguely sort of touched on politics, usually we start the podcast with this question, but I thought it would be interesting to kind of like to ask you, what was your journey into kind of like more radical politics like? Because I know obviously being in America, the Overton window shifted vastly further to the right than it is kind of in most of Europe.
Well, the UK has shifted
Yeah,
pretty
we
far
are
now.
very much like on
So-
I wouldn't even call it a slippery slope. It's more just like a complete
slide.
just a free fall into
Yeah.
fascism. But yeah.
Um, a lot of it came from music, really. Uh, I grew up, my family has been kind of tangentially involved in the music industry. My dad ran a record store, so that I grew up in that record store and started working there when I was 13. Got into punk and, in that adjacent, the like Food Not Bombs sort of area, and just surrounding myself with people that talked about it a lot. Um, the first time I remember like having, a critical leftist thought was listening to Prison Song by System of a Down, and like, he has the rant about prison statistics, and then, you know, if you pay attention to that for half a second, you'll have a number of questions about why those stats exist. And just kind of going from there, uh, being involved in the punk scene and then working in radio. That's where Achaierai, and our guitarist, and I met, was doing radio at our local college. And yeah, just kind of going from there, and then being in I grew up in a relatively small town in Colorado, and then moved up here to Seattle about 6 years ago now. So I was up here for the George Floyd protests and the CHOP, or the Chaz. I don't know
Yeah.
if y'all are familiar with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's like the anarchist sort of zone of the city that kind of like
Yeah, the
autonomous.
Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, which was really something to behold. It was that period of time was uh, scary and very interesting to watch unfold. Seeing, people breaking up concrete and making garden plots
Yeah.
in it was just, it's something that you talk about in theory with a lot of people, and then to see it happening, with all the good and the bad that came from that, short stint of time, the 4 months or so, um, was
It was
It was like quite
remarkable.
a long time ago now, though.
Yeah, it objectively wasn't though. It was very
No.
recent, but I mean, like, yeah, like I'd see like things on like Twitch and things like that where, as you said, like people creating communal gardens in the middle of like a city, and like this kind of like almost like things that had always been like talked about in the circles I've been in as theoretical things of what could be
Yeah.
done, and then actually seeing it come to fruition even for a short period of time was incredible.
Yeah, it was really like, a lot of the talking points against some of the more uh in-depth leftist ideas is that it doesn't work in practice, with big air quotes. And we got to see it in practice for a little bit before it got shut down, and before uh people that wanted to take advantage showed up,
Hmm.
which is kind of the American way of,
Yeah.
you
I
see
think
it.
though, sorry,
Oh,
I was
go
gonna
ahead,
say
go.
I think that like communal living and stuff like that is very natural anyway. Like I'm gonna use this as a weird example, but me and my partner have just finished watching The Walking Dead, and like that show is, I'm gonna say it's pro like an anarchist communist future.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't know if you've seen it, but you haven't. But like the last season is literally take down the government. The old world is wrong. We'll establish a new egalitarian society.
Oh, funny.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
the Last of Us did that
Yeah.
too. They directly like called it out. It was like,
Oh, but we're not communists, dude. We live on a commune. We are
Yeah.
communists.
yeah.
I like fist pumped at that bit when I watched
Yeah.
it.
And I
But
mean
then
that goes to show just how much more that's like on people's minds now, especially after the pandemic and things like, and all the things that came out of it. It showed the failings of the existing power structures, that if we're not propped up by capital, then the government falls to shambles pretty quickly and doesn't achieve anything that a small group of people working together can't do.
Yeah.
yeah, I wonder how much longer it's got left anyway, because like things are getting progressively more expensive for the working class. And then you've had it in the US now where Trump's gone, Biden's come in, and it's just back to the same old. So
I mean,
hopefully you don't get anyone worse
I
than
mean,
Biden, but it's like in the UK now.
going back to Marx, like I mean, we're not, we're both anarchists, but like you know, there's still a lot of his critiques of capital which still hold a lot of weight, and he his sort of prediction for the end of capitalism and the thing that would cause the contradiction in the whole what's it called again, the dialectic materialism, the historical materialism, that's it, would be that when the workers can no longer afford the goods that their labor produces, that's going to cause, because you can't sell those goods back to them, and that cycle breaks.
Well, I was just going to say, because in the UK, obviously, the Tories are about to collapse, but Labour have basically become Tory light. So when they get in, they're not going to solve anything. So it's just going to swing back again. And there's only so much that can go on before it's to crumble. Like me and my partner were talking about, like you could get a 2-bedroomed house to rent here for like £400 a month. Now they're like 600, and that's in like 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's like there's going to be a breaking point soon, and it's got very political very fast.
Well,
Who would have thought the left wing black metal podcast was,
it was inevitable.
Yeah.
So we'll get back to the music though.
Yeah.
So you're releasing it on the 22nd of December, so that's pretty late in the year. Are you trying to avoid the end of year album of the year lists, or are you planning to disrupt
Yeah, just kind of be like that little.
the last seed of doubt that gets people?
Mostly we just wanted the album to be out, that we've been working on it for so long, and waiting for it to happen for so long. It was basically a decision of, we release it in mid late December and don't worry about album of the year lists, or we release it in mid January and probably still don't worry about album of the year lists, because everyone forgets about January releases by the time December rolls around. Um, being kind of free of that discourse has been kind of, it took a moment for me to like let myself be okay with it, but it's been nice in that like people are talking about it on its own merits rather than
Yep.
comparing it to lots of other stuff. And there's uh, lots of great records that came out this year. Yesterday I was like, I'll briefly put my list of things that I like together, and I very quickly was at like 50 albums. And it's like, oh well, that's too many.
Yeah,
I have to
mine's
slim that down a
insane.
little bit.
I
I
found it so difficult
yeah.
this year because I've forgotten about so many releases that came out in the first half of the year. Like when I
Yeah.
was compiling my list, I totally forgot about like Dawn Rage had released an album this year.
Uh-huh.
Trespasser
Yeah,
released an
I
album
think
this year.
Trespasser might be my number one, maybe.
Yeah, I mean the Dawn Raid one was like, and given that they're gone, it's like, and I think that they left on a high, releasing what I think was their best album.
But then you've got like the Marth album that's just come out, which is insane. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's too hard. And then Catatonia released an album this year, and I'm a big Catatonia fan. But because the singles came out last year, in my head, the album came out last year. Oh yeah.
To put you on the spot, if you were to, we won't ask you to name like an album of the year because that might be too difficult, but like maybe just like a handful of standout ones, maybe.
Let me pull my list up real quick.
I mean, or we could go through like all 50 of them if you want. Like, I'm more than happy.
I really liked for like black metal specifically, the Fantafaxa, Hive Mind Narcosis. I'm a big fan of theirs, and they're kind of the like angry bee guitars where they swirl around you, buzzing. I love that sound. It's the most approachable record they've ever done, which it isn't saying much in the grand scheme of things, but uh, for a band where like the production could be like super muddy on purpose, it was very like tonally very clear, and I really liked that. Um, the Con8 record, To Be Cruel, I really enjoyed that. That was a like uh, came out of nowhere. Didn't expect them to ever release any new music. They've been quiet for a decade or so, and then they just dropped a new record out of nowhere. That was a fun day. I got to jam that at my workplace for about 5 minutes before I was told I couldn't play it anymore. The Regana record, Desolation's Flower, I really enjoyed that. The Dodheim's Guard, Black Medium Current, uh, really intense, froggy black metal. Um, the Urfaust record, their like breakup record, I really enjoyed too. What else is on here? Oh, the Soul on Varma. I am probably butchering that. It's like they were a bunch of the guys in the Icelandic black metal scene got together for Roadburn a couple years ago and like curated a set of like Disso Black stuff, and then they recorded it and put it out in like April. I'm a big fan of the Icelandic dissonant black metal stuff. So, ate that one up. I think the Mr. Ming guy was like the main guy for that one.
Awesome.
We're gonna be writing our list. I've just gotta get it streamlined. I've got like trying to find mine. There's like Trespasser is high up on there. I know like when I first heard that record, I was like, that's insane. But then like you've got like what I really liked was Stygian Love. Flowers Fade, like that is like the atmospheric sort of thing. Then there's like Wield and Woe.
Yeah,
that
so
that album was like insane. And I tried to get you to listen to that for months. And then when you finally did, you were like, this is amazing. I was like, yes. I've been trying to tell
That's
you, it
always
sounds
a
like
good feeling.
Achaierai. Yeah.
yeah.
Because I really like Achaierai as well. Like
Yeah.
I watched like
Okay.
the like what's it called? The festival, Fire in the Mountains. Is that what it's
Uh-huh.
called?
Yeah.
I watched that loads. I was just like, yes, it's just got that really nice, like medieval, nice
The
sound with
castle
the
metal stuff,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, what are your like influences then for your music? Like we asked you to pick the 5 songs.
Sure. So the running gag and open air secret about Bull of Apis, Bull of Bronze is that Achaierai and I just want to make Godspeed You Black Emperor records with a black metal sheen to them. So the first one I picked was actually not a Godspeed You Black Emperor song, but it's a Silver Mount Zion song called God Bless Our Dead Marines. Um, the undercurrent of like sorrow pinged with like just a hint of hope is exactly the tone that we have always been trying to get across, that like, you know, that things are bad, living is hard, and hope is one of the like purest rebellions that one can do right now. Just having an instant of thinking that things will get better one day through effort of mine and the people around me, that we could make our lives better outside of the influence of, you know, structural hierarchies and powers.
That's like a
Um,
nice, sorry, that's like a nice segue because a lot of the time we do often ask guests, like when it gets really heavy, like what like,
Gibson.
yeah, what gives them hope? Yes, thank you. Like what gives them hope? Because and a lot of like, especially political blackmail, it does have that element of hope to it. So it's like, I guess we'll ask you what gives you hope for the future?
um, right now it's that there's so much more discourse about things just in general, that people are seem much more aware now. Um, and that the sheen that uh imperialist powers usually can coat things with and obfuscate things with is becoming more and more uh clear, I guess, that watching the propaganda machine of the US and Israel work overtime right now, and that less and less people are buying it.
Yeah, like I've been shocked by, because for years, like the whole like Palestinian plight, the way it's been reported on has been like a deep source of frustration for me. But seeing even the BBC calling like Israel out on some of their lies and things like that, and they've been like for the longest time just like notorious for just kind of just being a mouthpiece for just the Israeli point of view and
Hmm.
brushing over, you know, decades of sort of genocidal actions. Actually seeing like BBC presenters just outright calling them on their bullshit is like it despite all the horror that's going on right now, it feels like a shift in sort of the consciousness regarding it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
where
so.
25 years ago, no one, at least no one in uh larger political circles were talking about the plight of Palestinian people.
Yeah.
Now it I don't know if it's just about like where I've put myself, but it feels like more people are aware now than ever, and more direct action is able to happen because of that. We could always do more, but it feels like people are at least more aware now and not as bought into the established status quo that the in particular the American and Israeli governments are trying to establish.
I think it's very hard when we're now living in a situation where everybody has access to the internet, can see footage on the ground of what's actually happening, and isn't so reliant on mainstream sources of like media for their news. It obviously has horrendous negatives as well, like but it is that kind of thing. It can kind of clear the smoke screen a little bit that gets put out by like the larger media conglomerates and what their masters kind of
Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel
they're
like the
trying to
Palestinian
push.
journalists have done like an amazing job of getting
Yeah.
stuff out there as well.
Mhm.
Like I've seen the posters of like the Times People of the Year, and it's had like the journalists like photoshopped onto it. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's what kind of keeps me going some days.
yeah. Like, sorry, this might be like derailing, but I think like on the topic of hope as well, I think that information technology sort of like surge that we've like lived through, you know, just in like the last 20 years, I don't think we'll like live to see like the complete ramifications of that, but I do think it's going to be like I read someone saying somewhere that it's analogous almost to when like the printing press came about, where like, you know, for the first time there was this wealth of information that was more widely accessible, and that, you know, had horrendous implications in terms of like centuries of religious strife and division and wars and stuff, but at the same time new ideas were allowed to be fostered and presented to people.
it's a very vague thing. I just wonder how it's going to progress, because obviously, like I feel like our generation was the first to just be thrown in. Like our parents had no idea what the internet was. We're there just as teenagers with the internet. Like Facebook was insane back like in 2010.
The Wild West of the
Yeah,
internet.
the Wild West, the internet, and then now obviously you've got like the Gen Z, like because I feel old now because I don't really care, but I don't know what's going on. But it seems like the Gen Z lot are like more politically switched on, and they navigate things a lot easier. I don't know if that's because of TikTok or what. I don't know. I don't use it, but this is like an old person's perspective.
No,
Old.
it definitely feels like, you know, younger folks kind of take it as a given to be politically aware rather than
Mm.
like at least like in I don't want to speak for y'all, but like my generation and further back where it was you know, still kind of not regularly talked about. You know, it was the joke was that to maintain friendships, you don't talk about money and you don't talk about politics and you don't talk about religion. And that has gone away, it feels like.
Yeah.
Um, where that discourse is pretty ever present, where like everything about, you know, your personality and what you believe is just kind of put out in the world and for people to see and make decisions about. So I think that that's an interesting thing. We don't know what the ramifications will be, but we'll get there regardless. So best
Yeah.
to see what happens anyways.
I mean, like, to be honest, like the genie's out of the bottle now, whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah,
There isn't, you can't contain it now. So
Yeah,
I think it's such a neutral thing though. It's like how you use it. So it's like
yeah, like
it
any
just comes down to
tool.
human nature, which I do think people are like generally okay.
What's the George Carlin thing where it's like, you know, that he absolutely loves people like as individuals, but people in numbers, like large groups of people are the scariest thing in the world.
uh-huh.
When like they engage in groupthink, whereas like individual people can be fantastic. You can see insights into them and you genuinely find like joy in like a human connection there. But like,
Unless you work in retail. I joke. Yeah. So what was your second pick? Second song pick.
The second pick was off the newest Amun-Ra record. I think the song is called The Evanmans. Um, it's got a lengthy spoken word portion. I got to see them live a couple years ago, and it blew me away that they're able to bring across just like this kind of nameless sorrow that's just like purely about the human experience that I just find like really endlessly entertaining and endlessly interesting. Coupled with the visual aspects of their performance, I just was immediately captivated. I had kind of been interested in them for a while. I remember when I think it was Mass 4 came out, and I was a young little boy working at the record store and listened to it and heard his vocals for the first time, and I was like, what? It's like, if you're not familiar with him, his vocal delivery is very high pitched and very like it's just kind of a gut wrenching wail, almost to like a DSBM sort of vibe,
Yeah.
um,
I mean,
coupled with like post metal riffing.
I adore that like vocal delivery, and it took me a while to sort of desensitize myself to it. But like bands
Yeah,
like Life Lover and None, they do that so well. But it is the first time you hear it, you do get like this visceral reaction to it. But
I suppose Summoning do it a bit as well.
yeah, to a lesser extent. But
Yeah.
I do see what you mean. Whereas like it is like pure like anguish what you get with like Life Lover or like None specifically because they're like my favorite
uh,
DSBM band. But
yeah, and it just a lot of what he does. I think Colin is his name, Colin Eckhart. Um, the kind of rawness of his vocal delivery was something that I really wanted to try and get across. And in a couple of the songs on the new record, my voice will crack occasionally, or the screams will hitch, and we kept all that in, just because I think it brings an emotionality across that just a pure scream doesn't.
I feel like it makes it more authentic as well.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and it thematically it works too. Um, and sometimes, when you're doing bedroom vocals, you're not in the best production space, so you gotta kind of work with what you have, and sometimes it works out to the benefit of the record as a whole. The next song was a Mars Volta track, Cygnus Visum and Cygnus. That's from our drummer Yaith. Um, Yaith has worked with so many different bands doing so many different styles, and he's really into. He did a solo record in 2020, I believe, just called 2020. That fans of ours should really listen to. It's a really interesting exploration of guitar tonalities. He works in microtonal guitar, which is way beyond my understanding of music. I wish he was here to describe it a little bit more because he would do it quite a bit more justice than I am doing it right now. But Yaith, we brought him on for the first record. We originally just wanted him to engineer it for us, and we had done drum machine, and he said, "Hey, I really like what you're doing, but the drum machine is lacking. Would you be interested in me playing drums on the album?" And of course, we said yes. And then over the course of that experience, we realized that he added the extra dimension that we needed, and we just asked if he would join the band permanently. And he was much more involved in the songwriting process for the second record, and the pacing of it has been uh, greatly influenced by him and his drumming, and I think it's definitely to the benefit of the overall record experience.
I think having an actual physical drummer and can also double as a producer just sounds like an incredible asset for any band to have.
Yeah, the finding a drummer is kind of a meme in
Yeah.
musician circles, where a drummer will be in 15 bands, and that's definitely the case for Yaith. Even just his own solo projects, he's probably got around that number, let alone the other bands that he's involved in. But we've definitely he's been an asset for sure. I'm very grateful for him coming on and enabling us to do what we do. The next song will probably not surprise anybody. Is the um, track "The Fall of Ephrathah" by Fall of Ephrathah. Alex, the singer for Fall of Ephrathah, did all of our artwork. And they're kind of a very formative band in the like post-metal post-crust sort of genre. The pacing that Fall of Ephrathah is able to do, the build-ups that they do are peerless, I think, and it's always something that the listening experience, especially at that song, where there's the anthemic kind of shouting of "the warren is empty" at the near the end. I love songs like that, or at like bits of songs like that where they'll stick in your heart for a really long time, and as soon as you hear someone mention them or refer to them, you get to feel that emotion again. Something that I tried to emulate and hope that it comes across on the new album. And then
Yeah.
the last one I picked is some of that Icelandic dissonant black metal, classic for people that are involved in the scene and know about it. Svartidauðis, The Perpetual Nothing. I just think in terms of like production and soundscapes, they're about as good as it gets for a blending of like technical black metal playing and atmosphere. The blend of that, I think, is what I really seek out in terms of black metal. And I just think that record, Flesh Cathedral, is about as close to a perfect black metal record as you could get. Um, yeah, they just are able to make it scary and intense without like leaning on hateful ideologies to make it scary. That's something that I'm getting pretty sick of people talking about, and that it needs to be, for it to be
Dangerous and
scary, it needs to
yeah.
be evil.
I don't see what's so
Um,
evil about agreeing with the church on several
yeah,
key
Maintaining
theories.
current power structures and
uh,
Yeah.
dynamics isn't dangerous or revolutionary or
and
anyway.
and it's antithetical to what black metal is supposed to be about, I think. The whole idea of rebellion, if you're spouting the same ideologies as the church or the state, like who are you rebelling against?
Some random
Someone,
person on Twitter
yeah,
that you
people that
disagree.
like Taylor Swift, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
those are the five tracks that I picked. I hope they fit into your radio show there. Some of them are a little long, so feel
Oh,
free
it's
to.
okay. We play a lot of long songs. I
I
think you dropped in.
yeah, I dropped one of the new Panopticon song, one of the songs off the new album that's 20 minutes long last week.
Nice.
I decided to end the show on that one because I wanted to play something off the new album, and it was the best song on the album, so it was just
Uh,
like, look, we have a 3 hour show, let's just use that to its fullest, and we can occasionally do stuff like that.
well, that's awesome. I'm excited to listen to it. Like I said, Achaierai and I met through radio. They did we used to do shows on Thursday nights. I did the heavy metal show at from 10 to midnight, and they did the kind of folksy, dark folk show prior to that, and we met
You've
that
got
way. And then
That's
what's
really
that?
weird.
yeah, you've got the same slot that we
Yeah,
have.
we do
Yeah,
Thursdays 10 till 1.
Yeah,
really? Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
that's really that's
Yeah, I did that
quite a coincidence.
for like my senior year of high school all through college, and then another 5 years after that. It was one of my favorite things. It helps to have the regularity of it. It was the most music consumption I ever did was during that time. You have to listen to lots of music.
Unfortunately, we're not able to do the show live, so we have to like pre-record all of it.
Oh,
Oh,
we
okay.
probably could do it live now, but I don't wouldn't trust that.
As we have like keys to the building now, but like yeah, like it definitely having to research new music for the show, and having, as you said, the regularity of being here, we almost sometimes use this as an office space. We conduct podcasts and interviews here, and sometimes it's just a good place to sit down and like write articles for our website.
Yeah, I feel like it's pushed us more to do stuff anyway,
Yeah,
because we've got like a schedule if we have to do something once a week. So it's
and we can almost turn it into
Yeah.
a sort of business meeting as well, which is quite cool because we know we'll both be in the building at
Yeah.
the same time and we can talk about future plans. Yeah,
Totally.
it's radio's cool. I never thought that we just sort of fell into this, but it's the last year's just been so fun.
Mhm.
No, that's awesome. I hope you get to do it for a lot longer.
We do too.
That's great.
So I could start crying then, I thought.
But thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I hope you get a chance to listen to the full record soon. It is 73 minutes, so gotta set some time aside
It's
for
a
it.
good 73 minutes though.
I mean, the bits that I heard when I was like hanging out at yours sounded amazing. It's just, I mean, like, at the time when you got the the pre-release, I was working like 2 jobs at the same time, like 70-hour work weeks, and I need to force myself to listen to more new
I think
music.
I listen
It's
to a lot
just-
more music than you though.
Yeah,
It's like some people are like, oh, I'll just listen to a podcast. I'm like, no, I just constantly listen to music.
I read
Yeah.
Okay.
See, I read less than I should.
maybe
It's
together.
about balance.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, thank you again. It's been great.
So
Yeah.
what would you say? The Fractal Ouroboros is
Yes,
out
sorry.
December 22nd through Via Productions and Vita Detestables.
Yeah, I think you got it right.
So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we have pre-orders up for LP, and I think the US cassettes have sold out, but Vita should have some cassettes over in the EU and UK here pretty soon. We've got a bunch of shirts and things for sale. I made another tea blend. If you do loose leaf tea, selling ounce bags of roasted green tea with chamomile and cedar. I said this on another uh, podcast yesterday, but for folks that are listening, we have the digital up for like, I think it's like $7 right now. But if you're in a space where you can't afford that, or just don't have the bandwidth to spend that, please shoot us a message on Facebook, and I'll get you a download code. We just want as many people to listen to it, and spreading it as much as we can. We worked on this record for 4 years, and I just want as many people to hear it as we can make happen. So please don't
Awesome.
hesitate to reach out if you want to listen to it in a way that works best for you. We'll make it happen.
No, that's actually pretty cool that you're doing that. Like most people are a bit more proprietary all over that, but that's a really cool attitude to have.
I mean, it'll be streaming in different places, but I know some people don't like streaming, and Spotify is Spotify. So if you want to avoid that, I will enable that as much as I can.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But yeah, thank you very much and take care. And yeah, please everybody check out the new album.